Hello, everybody. Welcome to this type of masterclass course video in which I'm going to teach you basically how to identify your identity, how to basically find out who you really are now, right? In your present moment. And I'm going to be using a lot of Erik Erikson's ideas, especially the identity ideas. We all know, anybody that has studied a little bit of psychology knows that Erik Erikson focused on the developmental stages all throughout life, right? The psychosocial dimension of life. But he also focused specifically on identity. And we need to understand that identity is almost as important as oxygen. Psychologically speaking, it is your oxygen. It is what basically lets you function. If you're dysfunctional, or if you're feeling bad or sick or depressed or unwell or anxious, it could be because you don't have a clear identity. That is, you don't really know who you are, right? And this video is called Identity Redevelopment because we already do this. We do an identity development. I would say we do a lot of them throughout our lives. Like when we're kids, we do the first one, right? Which is like, I identify with my mom, with my dad, with my peers, with my friends, with my classmates, with, the people on the TV. And then in your teenage years, you have another like redevelopment or readjustment, right? And then when you're a young adult, you kind of do another one, right? Maybe in your 30s, you do another. I would maybe say that every 10 years, you would probably do one. And this is this goes hand in hand with the values, with your value system. Your value system, as well as your identity system, and something else that I'm going to talk about in this video, need to be updated every once in a while, right? I wouldn't say there's a specific timeline. It's more of a Kairos timeline, which is like more subjective. You know when the right time is. But there are certain, I would say, like criteria points that can define when. Like, for example, when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, when you're an adult, when you face a change, right? Like a crisis, when you change jobs, move cities, right? Basically, when you have any type of change, you're going to want to re-update your value systems, your identities, right? Okay, well, we're gonna start with the words of Erik Erikson. I just got done finishing his biography, and I was reading something that he wrote, which was a case study of a kid. And I'm not going to get into the case study, which is interesting, but the idea that he has from this kid, right? So he's watching this kid. He has problems. He has, according to Erikson, identity problems, right? He has a missing father. His father eventually dies in war, right? He's kind of like conflicted with the identities, and he says a child needs to identify himself experimentally with habits, characteristics, occupations, and ideas from real or fictitious men and women, right? And we're going to get into what that is. But for me, this impacted me because this was basically like a roadmap in order to identify what, it's so common for people to ask, like, who are you, right? And just think about that and try to get some answers from that question, and you'll have your identity. But I think if you're able to have more tools and like steps, which I'm going to give you in this video, I think you're better equipped to have a more like a clearer picture, more defined picture of who you are, what you're meant to be doing in this moment in your life, right? Okay, so this is key for anyone, right? And it includes your values, like I mentioned, which should also be updated every couple of years. In order to do this, there are a couple of ways to do this, but one very easy way is just asking yourself, what do you value, right? Creativity, learning, teaching, right? And basically from there, you have your values, you have your basically your guiding principles for whatever actions and decisions you make in your life, right? So this should be updated every couple of years, right? As well as what you have been wrong about. Now, this is something from Leo from actualize.org, his channel, great channel. Shout out to Leo. And he basically states in this newer video, which he just recently released in mid-May, I think, May 2024, where he talks about being wrong, right? And how many of us are wrong, but we don't, we tend to kind of brush off when we're wrong, and we don't really update our belief system, right? Like what I used to believe in the past, I no longer believe it because I was wrong about that. And it's kind of like recognizing that, like in yourself, right? As well as maybe recognizing potential things that you're wrong about today, instead of waiting for the future to kind of spontaneously let you know in some type of situation, right? Like you can start to find that out about yourself by asking your questions, by asking yourself questions. What am I wrong about, right? Where do I think I'm wrong, right? Where are my conflict zones or my problem zones, right? And what could I be wrong about, right? Because you could be wrong about many things, about your ideas on things, about your perceptions of people, right? About the way life should be, right? So question that, update that. I think that's also very important. Okay, and I have a couple of questions that I'm going to be asking you and kind of going through, to kind of help you find out and redevelop your identity, right? I don't know if that's the correct term, but that's the term that I made up or I'm going to use. You're redeveloping, which means basically you're updating, re-updating, for a second, third, fourth time, right? Your identity. So the first one is with habits. So you can ask yourself this. In order to get your habits, right, which go hand in hand with your identity, it's like ask yourself, what do you do, right? What do you already do in life, right? So just think about that. Or what do you like to do, right? Which this kind of points more to like hobbies, right? But like, what do you like to do? So with using these questions, you're gonna get the habits, right? In order to get the characteristics, ask yourself, what do you like to see in people, or what do you value, right? Your values come in here. What do you value seeing in people, right? Do you like it when people are honest? Do you like it when people are real? Do you like it when people are nice? Do you like it when people are aggressive? Do you like it when people are respectful, right? Like what do you value? What do you admire in other people? Because this is key. It's going to come down basically to copying others, right? And who embodies these characteristics, right? Who has these qualities that you like to see in other people, right? Think about, we're going to get into it, but think about like celebrities, characters from movie series, stories. Think about people that you know in your life, right? Like who do you like to be around? Why do you like to be around them? What qualities, characteristics, personality traits do they demonstrate that you like, right? That you like to see. Okay, for occupations, ask yourself, what professions do you admire, right? Who do you know, real or fictitious, that does these occupations, that carries out these professions, right? So think about people with certain roles in society, right? Like, I don't know, a lawyer, a doctor. What do you admire about that person? Do you know someone like that? What characteristics do they demonstrate? What characteristics do they demonstrate that you admire, that you like, right? And ideas from real or fictitious men and women, right? And you need from both. You need, if you're a man, you need from men and women. If you're a woman, you need from men and women, right? So it's a balance. It's the yin and yang, right? Ask yourself, what ideas or lifestyles do you admire, either from real people you know, or characters in movies, series, stories, right? The ultimate questions are, what do you want to be like, right? So think of that person or those people, because again, it could be multiple people, and that integration of multiple people is ultimately what's going to give rise to your uniqueness, to your individual identity, right? So even if you feel bad about, I'm just gonna copy people, it's like that's inevitable. You're gonna copy people. Even your father, your mother, your brothers, you're gonna copy people, right? If you don't want to go as far as to say, oh, I don't want to copy, some random people, or like my boss, or like some celebrities, like you're still gonna copy, right? But I have good news. You're not gonna be a copycat. You're not just gonna be a walking clone of somebody. You're gonna be your own person, because you're gonna give that other personality your own twist. And it's not only going to be one personality, it's going to be multiple personalities, multiple situations, right? Multiple roles, multiple masks. And that integration is what's going to make your identity, your particular identity, right? So for this, ask yourself, what ideas or lifestyles do you admire, either from real people, or characters in movies, series, stories? The ultimate question, like I just mentioned, is who do you want to be like? Who do you admire? I'm going to start giving you some examples. Like, for example, for me, right now in this moment of my life, I really admire, I guess you could say, like YouTubers, right? Like Jordan Peterson. He talks a lot about different ideas, and I like the way he categorizes and organizes his ideas. I like what he's doing with the conferences, with writing a book and developing the ideas while he's going on this conference. His book's coming out in November, We Who Wrestle with God. I like the fact that he has people in like his show, right? And they just discuss freely, like any ideas that come to mind. I love that. I admire that. I want to almost imitate that, right, to a certain extent, but again with my own twist. Andrew Bustamante, for example, also he's an ex CIA agent, and I really got into this whole CIA thing and spy thing. I've been getting into that lately, and I admire him because he also started his YouTube channel, and he just uploads videos of him like talking about ideas, kind of like I do. I admire that. I admire intellectuals like Sartre, right? But I also admire rappers, right? Rappers that chill and flow and rhyme and make music, especially the Mexican and the Argentinian rappers right now in this moment. So, you see where I'm getting like all of these different identities, right? And they all make me, right? So it's not like I'm just gonna copy Peterson. Like, I have all of these different things, and I admire different things from these different people, right? It's not like I'm just taking that whole personality and making it my personality, because there are also things that I don't agree with regarding those identities, right? So you take what you like, right, and you kind of fit that into you start to give shape to your identity, right? Okay, so this should be done when there are changes in your life. This should be done and must be done, but it can be done, or it could be done whenever you want, right? Like if you're living a perfectly normal life, but it's kind of like a self-reflective exercise. It will make you aware of who you are, right? But if you need to update it, then you must do it, right? Kind of like when there are crises, when there are changes, major changes in your life, right? You need to update it, excuse me, basically to throw out that which you do not need, right? Or use anymore. So you throw out that which is no longer functional for you, which is just taking up space, kind of like when you clean your house, right, of clutter. So you need to get rid of stuff, right? In this case, this is all psychological and mental. You need to get rid of things, right? You don't use anymore, you don't need anymore. They're just taking up space. And the things that you do keep, you need to reinforce them, right? You need to reaffirm them, like I need this. This is perfectly seen, for example, in Inside Out with Riley, right? Inside Out is that movie with the emotions, and Riley has a big change. She needs to do a whole identity redevelopment, readjustment when she moves from Montana to California, to San Francisco, and she basically doesn't know who she is anymore. She stops feeling, right? But that's ultimately what she needs to do. She needs to find her new identity, right? She needs to check who she really is. So if you've seen the movie, you know that there are these islands that make up her personality, and I think there are 5 of them, right? Like honesty, family, hockey, Goofy Island, and I forget the fifth one, but I think there are like five, and they all get destroyed, right? But towards the end of the movie, Family Island gets rebuilt, and that's what I'm talking about. There are certain things that may need to go, that you need to get rid of, but there may be, of course, new things come up, because towards the end of the movie, I think she has like 10 new islands or something like that. So she readjusts her identity, but family is the first one, I think, that comes back, and in this case, that's like reinforcing, right, that family identity in her, right, which basically is made up of like her mom, and her dad, right. So yeah, you can do this, like she did it post crisis, right? Or also like when you get fired, like if you get deported, like in my case, right? You need to do, which I think I didn't do. I did do. I mean, this like identity readjustment, you are going to do it no matter what, right? Especially after a crisis. Now, you can decide to do it consciously, or it will get done for you unconsciously, right? And that's like what Carl Jung is famous for saying, like, unless you take charge of the unconscious, you'll just, it will just happen, and you will call it destiny, right? But it's really you that's doing that, that's looking for that. Even unconsciously, you're looking for new forms of life, or new identities to like basically imitate and copy, right? To integrate into who you are. Okay, now why? This is a very interesting question. Why do we need this? Well, first of all, you need access, which is something that Erik Erikson talks about with this kid, which I thought was very interesting. So he talks about how this kid was basically maladapted, or he misbehaved because he wasn't exposed to socially significant models. So you need these models. You need to seek them out. You need to look for them, right? You can think them up, and I'm gonna get into that in a moment. But I think it's easier, and it's also better to have options, right? So like watching movies, series, reading stories, meeting new people, learning about celebrities, historical figures, biographies, right? Like just basically checking out the world, right? People wise, like learning about people, learning about the way of life of different people, their habits, their lifestyles, their ideas, right? You learn about people, and it's going to help you, because that way you will be able to integrate those things that you like about those people, and that's going to better shape your identity, right. Now the idea in which you can just think them up is something from Carl Jung. Joseph Campbell is kind of in that too. You can feel this need of socially significant models, because a lot of times we don't have them, right? Like you say, well, do you admire your father or your mother? No. Do you admire your friends? No. Do you admire the people in your community? No. Do you admire celebrities? No. Do you admire historical figures? No. Then it's like you need to look for more people, right? Be exposed to different types of people, right? So you can take from them, because they did the same. They took from other people too, and everybody takes from everybody, right? At the end of the day. So that's that it's like, oh, you're a copycat. That's where I say, no, you're not really a copycat. That's what we all do, right? And it's as necessary as oxygen, right? For our mind, for our psychological health. So there are archetypes also. Archetypes, I think, are now commonly used, or they've been used for like theater, for movies, for drama. There's the archetype of the hero, the archetype of the Joker, the archetype of the magician, the archetype of the lover, right? There's countless archetypes. There are a lot. Jung had like 12. He defined 12. But I mean, just ask ChatGPT, or just go online, and you'll find a ton of archetypes, right? And you can kind of, if you look at one and you say, oh, like the magician, he's cool. Let me know what his characteristics are, which kind of ties in with like the zodiac sign. Like your zodiac sign are is an identity, right? And you decide what you take from your zodiac sign, right? Like I'm a Taurus, I like being hardworking and determined, but I don't like the fact that Tauruses are lazy, so I just leave that off, right? Like I'm not lazy. I'm not taking that as part of my identity, and I'm not. I don't consider myself lazy, right? So you decide what to use, right? That's ultimately what that is. You're being exposed to, but these archetypes are more abstract, right? It's not like a real person like my father or my mother, right? It's like the idea in its distilled form, right? Like a magician, the archetype of the magician. Well, that could be like Frank Underwood in House of Cards, or that could literally be like a magician on stage, right? So it could embody different uh, personas, sort of say, right? And that's what makes an archetype like so valuable, that it can be applied to different things. So you can also look up archetypes and use these basically to take form, right? Or take from, sorry, to take from, kind of like having socially significant models, right? That you can emulate, or copy and imitate, right? So yeah, you need to be able to imitate them, because that's what we do, right? That's what humans do. So we need to find them, and you need to ask yourself, what do you want to do, and who has already done it, right? I'll repeat that again. What do you want to do, and who has already done it? Because if you know of someone, either celebrity, real person, fictitious, whatever, historical figure, that has done, what you want to do, you have a model, right? It's easier for you to believe in yourself knowing that someone already did it, right? So you can think back, and if you don't believe me and you say, "Oh, that's just crap," that doesn't really work. I challenge you to think about your past and apply this idea to your past. Think about moments in your life, and I just figured this out yesterday talking to my mom, and she made me see something that I wasn't aware of. She said, when you were like 18, 19, you wanted to get your own apartment, right? You wanted to start to live by yourself, like have your own job. I was already working, but like, basically provide for yourself, right? Like live independently. And I was like, yeah, I kind of did. And ever since I was like 19, I've been doing it, and I'm happy. I think it's a good lifestyle. um, but then I started thinking about this, and I was like, where did that idea come from? And it came from a friend I had. It came from a friend I had that basically had like problems, with like his family or something. I don't really know what happened, but the thing is that he got his own place. He would invite us over to like, visit him and everything. And I think he was a model for me, in that way, that I was able to see that that could be done, and I wanted that for myself, right? So I could have thought back then, and I actually did think back then that maybe that was my idea, right? I came up with that. I just want to live by myself, because it looks nice to have your own things, your own space, your own time, freedom to be able to do whatever you want whenever you want. But it actually came from somewhere, right? And that's where I say I challenge you to look. If you think about your life and you think about the decisions you've made, like the big changes you've made and everything you've accomplished, there's probably someone that you were modeling, either consciously or unconsciously. You were thinking about someone, right? So, and typically it's someone you admire, right? You had a roadmap to how to get to where you wanted to go. So yeah, we all need this. We find them. Ask yourself, what do you want to do, and who has already done it, right? You probably ask yourself this question in the past subconsciously, and think back to moments when you have done this, right? Like me getting my own apartment after seeing a friend get his. Finally, we have to experiment like a child would, right? And Erik Erikson actually talks about this. He says that a child experiments, trial and error, right? And then he's able to combine or integrate the different fragments of identities. I think that's key, right? What you're ultimately doing is kind of like putting together one of those sculptures or works of art where there are many fractured like mirrors or colored mirrors, right, or pieces of glass, and you make like a what is that called, like a conglomerate, right, like a mixture of all these things, and that's you. You're a mixture of all these fragments of identities that you've taken from different people in your life, right, that you're exposed to, that you admire, right, that the qualities that you admire, right. I'm not talking about the whole person, like I become that person, like I already mentioned. It's not about being a copycat. It's about taking parts from here and there, right, from all these people, and especially the parts that you admire, that you want for yourself, right? And that way you make a new you, right? Now, this is also very interesting because you could say, well, how do I evaluate this, right? How am I able to know if I'm on the right path? And Erikson, I mean, he just this part in which I got all this information from is like one paragraph, right? But it's like, oh man, that's what makes a good writer. A good writer will say so much in so little, right? And boom, 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 you just have like all these ideas. Um, so how will you evaluate this? He even gives us a criteria, which he says, I think this may be like maybe like preliminary, or it's not really like well defined, or people are going to say, no, that's not the ultimate evaluation criteria, or criterion in this case. But I would say, well, I mean, just go with it for now. It's utility, or how useful it is to you, right? How well it adjusts to your current needs in your current context, right? And you need to consider context the whole time. You need to consider context, right? So this will be your established criteria: utility, right? How beneficial it is to you, how useful it is to you to be like this, excuse me, to use these fragments of identity and to integrate them, right? Um, so you can always only keep that which best suits you, right? Which is the most functional and adaptable to your environment, basically. Why? Because ultimately you need to be able to express yourself, experiment, and live out that integration of those different fragments of identity, right? You need to be able to live out that that new identity, right? That integration of the different identifications or identities or fragments of identities, right? If not, people get destructive, right? If not, people will manifest bad behavior, or they become maladaptive socially, right? They don't, basically society is not going to want you, right? So you need to figure out what those things are that society will allow you, right? Within its own, dance of balance, me and the other, and me, I as an individual, and society as the other, the mass, right? To be able to do that dance effectively, right, and not trespass or tread on each other's dignities or rights or freedoms, right? Like everybody respecting each other. um, yeah, so what you do is you identify with it, you imitate it, or you copy it. But of course, like I mentioned, you give it your own natural twist, right? Your own genetical twist, your own innate twist, right? Which makes you you. Um, so yeah, it's like making like a dish, right? You combine all these things, maybe like making a milkshake, right? You put milk in it, you put strawberries, you put banana, you put sugar, you put vanilla, you put like all these things in it, you mix it up, but like you're kind of like the blender, right? Or the cup, which is gonna, or you're the one that's drinking it. I don't know how to use this metaphor, right? But you get what I'm saying, right? It's like the fragments of all these identities. And at the end of the day, you're the recipient in which they're all going to fit in, right? And you're going to shape that ultimately, right? And maybe they're going to help you shape like the different fragments too, right? To kind of make them like fit, like I agree with this, but this idea from this person contradicts this thing, which also makes me me, like kind of like Sartre was an atheist, and I admire Sartre, but one of the things that I don't agree with Sartre on is his idea of atheism, right? Where like God doesn't exist. And I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, so I'm like, no, I believe in God. So that's a part that, I mold, and I say yes, I agree with most of Sartre's work, and I admire him, and I think he was a poet, other than apart from being a philosopher. But there's something that I don't agree with him on, right? And you don't have to agree with everything, because you're not going to turn into another. You're not going to turn into that person, right? You're going to be you. Okay, so every once in a while, you need to rewrite your identity. The essential question to all of this is, who are you, right? Who are you is the essential question. And the answer is, like I've said it before, you are many people put together. Or in Erikson's words, he says, psychosocial identity comes about from a gradual integration of all the identities, or all the identifications, right? So again, this integration, and he says gradual, right? So it's not like boom, immediate, right? There are things from your past that you're still gonna value. There are things from your present that you're valuing, that you're going to implement, and there are other things that you're not, as well as from your past, things that you're no longer need, or that are useless, basically. And okay, going a little bit back to the question of why, all of this is due to the danger of separation. So Erikson, in this part, he says, um, or at least that's what I took from it. Like when you separate from your mother, when you're born, right? You're always in fear of separation, right? It's kind of like if you get like body parts taken out of you, but this is like mentally and psychologically, right? Your identity is like, that's where Peterson says, like, poke them in the axioms. Like if someone challenges you on an essential part of your identity, just look at how you react, right? You get aggressive, you get mean, you get nasty, right? That's because it's like someone challenging, like, to take a finger away, or like an arm away, right? So ultimately, it is a fear of losing yourself. But what's very interesting about this is that losing yourself, kind of like the Eminem song, is pretty interesting. Is the epitome, or what you really want to achieve in any creative process, right? Now, yeah, car just passed by. Um, but going back, like, and I think that would give way to another like video or another investigation topic. But this idea of losing yourself, like Eminem says, like, lose yourself in the music, and it's kind of like that zone of proximal development from Vygotsky, the idea of in the zone, in your element, when you're lost, when you kind of forget about who you are, of yourself, right? You forget about eating, you forget about sleeping, you're so engaged in that, right? Creative process. That's awesome. That feels, you know, but I think that's another topic, because what you're doing ultimately there is forgetting who you are, right? You're getting lost in the moment. And there's a time and a space, right, for everything. So I think that's also good to do. Um, but yeah, that would be interesting, right? Because the fear ultimately is of losing yourself, right? Psychologically, like you would losing parts of your body or things like that, right? Um, so yeah, let me give you, just to finish the video, some examples. Um, my first example is that one, right? Like my friend getting his own apartment, and then I wanted to like imitate that, and then I did, and it was awesome. Um, I admired, I think from a young age, like, and I've talked about this, kind of like Will Smith when he came out with like Men in Black soundtrack. Maybe Michael Jordan, even from Space Jam. Obviously, as I got into my teenage years, I admire rappers a lot, like especially Tupac, Eminem, because I really wanted to make hip hop music and like be a rapper. And I still make hip hop, but I think I've kind of put that in the back burner for now. Mm, okay, excuse me. Now I admire like modern Mexican and Argentinian trappers and rappers, right? I really love the music they make, and the way they flow, and they motivate me to write, right? To keep writing. Um, yeah, because I feel like hip hop in the United States, current hip hop 2024 is non-existent, right? Basically, it's all like pop now. Obviously, I admire Sartre, right? Jean-Paul Sartre, French philosopher, and Iron Man. I think when I think of like my dream house, I think about Iron Man, like you know, that house that he had on the hill of Malibu, on the hills of Malibu, and like, you know, kind of being close to a beach, to like a body of water, right? Like a lake or a river or something like that. I think that's my dream house, right? That's what I picture when I picture like my future and like me living in like a nice house. And I also like Iron Man's character, right? I really admire him, right? Like I will kind of imitate him. I don't know. Now, like I mentioned, Jordan Peterson, YouTubers, Andrew Bustamante. I've also admired throughout my past Sherlock Holmes, intellectuals, right? Especially like psychologists, sociologists, philosophers, obviously. I admire The Rock for working out at one point. Now I no longer work out, but I now I kind of I'm waiting for that, like, you know, what do you call it, like spark to start working out again, because I know I need to work out, but now it would be more because of a need, less because of a want. So I'm working on that, as I'm sure many of you are. But yeah, The Rock would motivate me because The Rock would always be posting these videos of himself like working out, and I would be like, yeah, you know, he'd be like, work hard, you know, and I would be like, yeah, you know, and that would motivate me. Now it's like Mr. Beast and Freud, also because those three guys are all Tauruses and I'm a Taurus, so that's where that identification comes in. Freud, because he impacted, like, you know, he basically created a whole field, psychoanalysis, psychology. And Mr. Beast, because he was kind of like The Rock, where he, you know, like basically now they're at like they're 500, 600 million net worth guys, right? So that's awesome. Octavio Paz, Porfirio Diaz, you know, Mexican. One was a Mexican like writer, you know, I love his writings. And the other one was a Mexican, they call him dictator because he was in power for like 30 years, but he also did good things. He's a controversial figure. But again, like I admire him. This is one thing that I was maybe wrong about in the past, which was Che. I used to admire Che Guevara, but I don't anymore because I feel like, and maybe because of the popularity, you know, like I tend to not like things that are popular. And nowadays, Che Guevara is like very popular, like Pancho Villa too, like the revolutionaries. It's like, oh, like, you know, and if everybody's a revolutionary, are there even any revolutionaries, real revolutionaries left then? You know, it's kind of like everybody's a rebel. That kind of, that idea is kind of old and cliche. Um, One of my current bosses, right, from real life, that I have, I admire his like chill attitude, and I think like some of my colleagues also, they have this like laid back, chilled attitude. That's what I admire in them. My mom's, of course, and an uncle that helps. So, and just to finish off this video, I'm gonna leave you with these four categories that you can use to maybe identify people that you admire. Think about people that are like characters, like I said, in movies, series, stories. So the fictitious category. Think about people from history, from the past, right? So this category is historical figures. Think about celebrities, right? This category is celebrities, so like actors, actresses, singers, right? Famous people. And think about people you know. So they would say real people, right? You know, the people from your work, from your school, from your community, you know, people, your friends, right? And yeah, I really hope this video helps you to better equip yourself with the tools to understand where you are in life and what your identity is, right? And let me know what you think about this in the comments section. Hit like, subscribe, all that shit. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, peace.